actress Dawn Wells on the 1960s sitcom Gilligan's Island.
Beautiful, wonderful movie star. I mean, I was, pretty brand new.
Dawn Wells is known as an iconic actress for playing Mary Ann in the movie Gilligan's Island. However, while she was charming to many people on screen, her real life was filled with many struggles. The world was shocked to hear of her death, but this was nothing compared to what characterized her last days. Keep watching as we delve into everything you need to know about her and her tragic death. Dawn Wells' abandoned house. Dawn Wells had two homes located in Redington Shores, Florida. One of the houses was demolished in 2008 and later replaced with a duplex. After demolishing this house, people began to refer to the home as a three-story townhouse. During many interviews, Dawn spoke fondly about it and its beautiful surroundings. She particularly loved to talk about a wild crane named Henriette, who would often come to visit. After this property was developed, Dawn shifted her focus to activities like her book. However, till the day she died, she kept talking about Henriette on her Facebook post. The Redington Shores, Florida home was purchased in 1978, and just 2 years later, she bought the Everetts. The second home still stands, and it has even been updated with features like a boat lift and a slab of the old driveway with Wells's autograph. The Redington Shores, Florida, was an unassuming property. It had no lavish gates, but it is a cozy and comfortable house. The house's appearance says a lot about how the owner of the place lives a very simple and humble life. It shows that Dawn is unaffected by the glamour of Hollywood, and she continues to thrive in her down-to-earth personality. The house radiates warmth, and it was always the best place for Dawn to hide from the eyes of the public. It also reflects on her life, away from the buzz of fame. Everyone who had the opportunity to visit her kept saying that the house was a tangible piece of her personality. This house was like an everyday home to them. They couldn't help but wonder how someone so famous could live such a modest life. Constantly, her house was full of charm and character, which was extremely different from what was seen continuously in show business. Unfortunately, as time passed and Dawn's health began to decline, the very same house became forgotten, becoming one of the celebrity's struggles. The house became such a chore to her that after she dealt with the health issues she had and the complications that sprang up as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, she had to move into an assisted living facility in Woodland Hills. As soon as she left, the house began to experience a slow but inevitable decline. This transformation went unnoticed by the public for so many years. Urban explorers and fans only noticed the house again after her death in December 2020. As they moved into the house, they saw a scene that screamed how lonely and neglected Dawn was at her old age. It was more terrible because her fame had long faded. The first sight that greeted the people was haunting. The furniture was covered with dust, the curtains faded, and the house had overgrown mold. The whole house screamed of abandonment as the floor was filled with piles of unopened mail. It seemed like time had stood still in that house, and in so many ways, it has. What was once a vibrant living room had become a shadow of its former self. One of the most shocking things in the house was the photographs of her past fame, which were captured when she played Mary Ann in Gilligan. This hung proudly on the walls. As the explorers stared at the pictures, they could not help but smile at how brightly the young actress shone. But they also knew that the picture represented a time that felt so far and removed from the reality of the present. The image on the wall showed extreme contrast to the house's present condition. Soon, the explorers began speaking about the house, and it became a potent symbol of a forgotten star and her hidden pain. This exposure made people see how badly Dawn struggled when she was aging. And worse, she faced all these without a safety net or financial security that many people thought she had. Public discovery. After the initial video of her abandoned house went viral, many fans, urban explorers, and YouTubers began speaking more about the state of the house. Soon, the internet was flooded with footage and photographs of this house, which sparked many reactions from the public. Some people were very sympathetic about the state of the house. They spoke bitterly about why the building did not receive the care it was supposed to after Dawn moved to the assisted living facility. They also added that the house's abandonment was the end of an era and reflected terribly on her fans. When she needed help, she had no support or recognition, even though she had brought so much joy to millions of people while they were growing up. Some people on the internet were more critical. To them, the current state of the house was a scandal, and it made them question what sort of life Dawn Wells lived for her to end up in such a condition. These people found it extremely difficult to connect the cherry image of Mary Ann on television every day to the neglected house they now saw online. However, regardless of how everyone felt, the discovery of Dawn's abandoned house was a viral sensation that shed more light on the hidden lives of aging celebrities. It made the public realize that many stars fade away during their later years and usually face the same struggles everyone else faces. The worst part is that they sometimes do not have the financial stability to cope with this. The second house that Dawn purchased before passing is now owned by Bea and Jim Everett. They constantly boast of the house's restored terrazzo floor and recently installed boat lift. We painted it yellow because the house in Old Carrollwood where I grew up was yellow, Bea Everett said. The color feels like home. A tour of their quaint 1,200 square foot Reddington Shores waterfront house can be finished in about 3 minutes, but it includes the story of a 3-hour tour. The Everetts, who are both 65 years old, particularly love a part of their property, the slab of the old driveway. This is etched with an autograph from Dawn, dated August 1888. The Everetts love how this constantly reminds them of the legend that lived in that house. They consider it an important part of the home. As for the first house that Dawn purchased, much isn't known about its current owners. However, it is being speculated that the house has no clear heir, as Dawn had no children and never got married again after her divorce. People believe that after she died, the property just went through the probate process, and through some legal procedure, the house was sold off to cover her debts. Still, little information is known about the sale or auction of the property. Regardless, the house is still a huge emotional part of Dawn's life and now serves as a time capsule of a fading star. Dawn Wells' financial crisis. Dawn Wells is famously known for her role as Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island. Before she died, she was one of America's most loved actresses. People loved her sunny personality, and her charm made her a household name in the 1960s when the show was still on. However, Dawn didn't go through life without any struggles. Despite her fame, she still had to battle a humbling reality. This was filled with financial strain, a lack of medical security, and no safety net to fall back on. Her financial hardship is usually traced to an outdated and unjust royalty structure. It all started when Gilligan's aired in 1964, lasting until 1967. Back then, the actors and even stars of any movie production had to be compensated through what was known as a flat-rate contract. This was simply a contract stating that while the show had generated decades' worth of profits through reruns and syndication, all the original casts of the movie were not to receive any residuals. This was the same contract that Dawn signed, unfortunately led to her financial hardship. Such a contract doesn't exist in our present times because our era is filled with streaming and rerun royalties. However, Dawn and her co-stars did not enjoy the same privilege that our celebrities are enjoying today. Even after the show continued to succeed, they had no financial benefit. As a result of the contract not including any ongoing earnings for them, it created a financial pitfall that Dawn never fully recovered from, even though she was one of the most iconic TV casts. After the show ended, Dawn struggled to find another steady acting job to match her early fame. Unfortunately, she played the Mary Ann character so well that the character overshadowed her, thereby making it difficult for her to land more roles that would allow her to reinvent herself or even showcase the full scope of her talent. Dawn thought that since television was not favoring her, she might make some headway in the theater. However, this venture also did not give her the financial security that a long-running television show would. The financial instability caused by her career and personal setbacks soon made her hit some very hard years. One of the personal setbacks that drained her finances was declining health. The standard medical procedures took a lot of money, and she never had any financial cushion to fall back on. Through it all, Dawn stayed independent and hopeful. Still, as each day passed by, it became obvious that her medical bills and daily expenses were getting too much, especially since she was now aging with no steady support system. After trying to hide it and be independent for so long, Dawn began to crack, and in 2018, her close friend and hairdresser, Doug Kirkpatrick, noticed it and immediately launched a GoFundMe campaign on her behalf. The campaign's goal was to help her raise $200,000 so she could use the money to pay off her medical debt and her housing expenses. As soon as this campaign started, the public was surprised. How could the sweet and innocent Mary Ann be in such a terrible position? Initially, people did not get an answer to their questions, but out of their love for her, everyone stepped in to donate and support her. Most people even appreciated her for being very vulnerable, which made them more excited to help the woman who brought them so much joy when they were children. However, some people still criticized her and the campaign. To them, they felt like she was trying to extort money from the public, cause no one that popular should ever go through any form of financial crisis. When Dawn heard about this criticism, she was badly hurt. She wasn't much of a reckless spender. She tried her best to manage her resources, but unfortunately, those resources were not so much. Dawn was both moved and embarrassed during that period. She was famously known for her grace and humility, not for asking for help. Nevertheless, when she went for interviews, she expressed how grateful she was for the support and would often stress that the whole situation had been mischaracterized. Even though she did not declare bankruptcy, she was still facing some tough times, and she mentioned that even when she knew many celebrities or people could not relate to her situation, it did not change the fact that she was still facing it. Through it all, Dawn managed to maintain her pride and personal dignity. From the campaign, Dawn raised $195,000. The situation made people understand that fame does not always guarantee fortune. Dawn Wells' tragic death. Dawn Wells had a dreamy life during the 60s, but her time in the limelight faded after the Gilligan's Island show ended. In her last days on Earth, she lived in an assisted living facility in Los Angeles and was isolated as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus affected California, where she resided, and came with a very cruel twist for Dawn, who had already been battling declining health. Despite the toll this took on her, Dawn tried to stay in touch with her fans. She constantly appreciated her audience profoundly and would even write letters to her supporters to show how grateful she was to them. Unlike other letters that celebrities write, people notice that these are very emotional, and they allow Dawn to connect with her fans, who have adored her for so many years. Even when Dawn was battling health challenges, she remained true to herself and maintained her authentic connection with her fans. However, Dawn did not just communicate through letters. She also appeared at fan conventions and interviews. She would most times travel for these events, even though her old age was beginning to take a toll on her. After her death, her fans discussed meeting her at almost every convention. They added that she would often speak so passionately about Gilligan's Island. She would even share her personal stories and engage with her admirers. Dawn did not allow her financial struggles or medical debt to keep her from living a life of grace and humility. She mentioned that her main purpose of attending those conventions was to meet her fans and preserve her legacy, which would help her stay relevant in the industry. Unfortunately, this industry forgets its stars once the spotlight dims on them. On the 30th of December 2020, Dawn Wells passed due to some complications from the COVID-19 virus. She died at the age of 82, when the pandemic was at its peak. To many fans, this was a sudden and very painful death. For months, the world has had to deal with the effects of this virus, And when Dawn passed away, it served as a reminder that the pandemic had affected so many, including the stars and icons that we admired so much. However, what made Dawn's death so painful was that she died alone. As stated earlier, she had no kids. However, some people chose to look at her life through the lens of solitude, which reflected the quiet and private nature of her final years. She had spent much of her life isolated from the public, as she tried to maintain the deep connections she had cherished for so long. Unfortunately, in the fight against life, she did not win. Her death led to an outpouring of grief and sympathy from all her fans and co-stars. Suddenly, an overwhelming attention was placed on Dawn Wells, showing how much people loved Gilligan's Island. Unfortunately, it also showed how the public can immediately become infatuated with a celebrity after they pass away. However, for the fans, the loss of Dawn was not just like every other loss. This one felt like a part of their childhood was taken away from them. Dawn's co-stars were equally devastated by this news. Tina Louise, who played Ginger on the show, shared her sadness after stating that she and Dawn were close friends. Drama Denver also paid her tribute by saying that Dawn was a funny, inquisitive, curious, and wonderful person. She also stressed how her warmth had a lasting impression on almost everyone she worked with. To the fans, Dawn was more than just a character they would watch on television. She showed them how to be sweet, humble, and very simple in their ways. The character of Mary Ann was very down-to-earth, making her easily approachable by her fans and supporters. Mary Ann's own had a charm, which is why, to date, she remains an iconic pop culture figure. However, there have been a lot of debates on the topic of Mary Ann and Ginger. The discussion only shows that with how Dawn portrayed Mary Ann, the character had only aged like fine wine. Because of this excellence, after so many years have passed, the original show keeps running, and all their fans continue to discuss who their true favorite is. Many still say that their favorite character is Mary Ann. This is not just because of the endearing qualities that the character has, but also because of the humble nature of the person who played the character. Even though Dawn faced a lot of hardships, she also lived a complete life, and people constantly talked about how kind and humble she was. At the end of the day, her story shows resilience in the face of adversity. Even though she experienced so much financial and emotional hardship, her legacy is still powerful. Her struggles only shine more light on how she lived her life with so much grace, dignity, and a commitment to her fans. Her death brought about so many topics in the entertainment industry and made fans and co-stars determined to do better by each other and constantly look out for one another. Net worth left behind. Dawn died at the age of 82 in December 2020. Her net worth was estimated to be between $50,000 and $100,000. When this was made public, everyone considered it extremely low, especially for a woman who had once captured America's heart and starred in a thrilling sitcom. Her net worth was almost unbelievable, making people break down her financial journey. What was noticed was that she was just sad. Dawn had no royalties. This was a major contributing factor to the low net worth. She had no consistent passive source of income, and in addition to that, her acting roles were very limited, and she was always underpaid. Dawn had tried to run a small business named Wishing Wells Collections. The company was a clothing line for individuals who had limited mobility. Unfortunately, this business did not give her enough money to change her financial trajectory. The next factor that contributed terribly to her net worth was health care. In the United States, medical bills can be a massive burden for the middle class, and it can be worse for someone who has no consistent health insurance coverage or even a retirement fund. When Dawn faced $200,000 in medical debt back in 2018, it wasn't because she could not properly manage her finances. It was simply because healthcare doesn't care if one is famous. Also, Dawn never had any children, even though she was briefly married. She also did not have a family support system or a long-term partner that could help her carry the burden that comes with aging. So even though she aged gracefully, she also aged alone without a safety net that most people rely on. This makes the difference between Mary Ann's image and Dawn's real-life circumstances very clear. While Mary Ann was a very sweet and wholesome farm girl with a constant smile and pie, Dawn was an equally warm and generous woman who unfortunately faced a harsh reality that most people do not experience. Dawn Wells may not have had millions at her death, but she left a legacy of warmth, kindness, and humility. Did you grow up watching Gilligan's Island? What do you like about the Mary Ann character? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more true stories that reveal the faces behind the fame.